while we are waiting for more folks to trickle in, going to start off with some quick housekeeping and introductions. So going to introduce myself for those that don't know me. My name is Adriana Griffith. I'm the statewide advocacy manager here at Initiate Justice, and it's a pleasure to be in space with everyone. I'm really excited to be bringing this amazing, amazing training to the community tonight. We've been doing it in person in various parts of the state this year. So really, really excited to be bringing it to everybody in this virtual space. So I'm excited. But before we get into everything, I'm going to pass it to some of my colleagues to introduce themselves. Ephraim, I'll pass it to you.
Hey everyone, what's up? How's everybody's Wednesday going? Hope it's going great. My name is Efrain Ortiz. I'm the programs associate here with Initiate Justice, working directly with our outside members and outside organizers. So great to be in space with you all. With that, I'll pass it over to the person on my right, Shivani.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Shivani Nashar. I am the policy associate with Initiate Justice. So doing all things policy, legislation, Sacramento, all that good stuff. Feel free to also drop intros in the chat. We'd love to know where y'all are calling in from, and I will pass it to the lovely Alyssa.
Hi, everyone. Excited to be in space with y'all. Alyssa Rodriguez here, pronouns she, her, hers. I'm the executive assistant, and I'm excited to kind of just talk about community organizing and seeing where everyone's coming from in community organizing, whether you're new to it, whether you've been doing this for a while. I think everyone has something to learn or sharpen today, so I'm excited. I'll pass back to Adriana.
Thanks, Alyssa. And yeah, we're excited to have everybody in space tonight. I dropped a link in the chat. So if you are a first timer, if this is your first time in this meeting space with us, please feel free to head on over to that link that I just dropped and sign up to be an official member with us. So what it means to be an official member of Initiate Justice is you will receive via email monthly updates every month. So we have this meeting, and then about a week or so later, if you missed the meeting or you were unable to make it fully, you get a full email update on a meeting recap. You'll get other updates, organizational updates. We have a monthly newsletter that we send out every month, so you will also get that. That has everything from community spotlights to job announcements and other community events that are happening throughout the state. So please feel free to head on over to that link and sign up if you have not done so already. We will share this link again throughout the evening. So don't feel bad if you don't catch it this time. We will share it again throughout. But welcome in if you are a first timer. Thank you for being here with us. And again, I see everybody zooming in or sharing where they're zooming in from in the chat. So I love to see it. So thank y'all so much for being here. Before we get started with this fabulous presentation, we do have one quick announcement to make with everybody, not necessarily an announcement, but a call to action. And so we actually have a super cool opportunity for folks to participate in this month if you are able to. So later on this month, Wednesday, August 20th, Initiate Justice in collaboration with some of our other community partners are going to be hosting a press conference and a rally at the state capitol in Sacramento in support of one of our co-sponsored bills, AB 1071 by Assemblymember Ash Kalra, and that is specifically pertaining to the California Racial Justice Act. And so we want to make sure that folks who are going through this criminal legal system can go through it without racism involved in that process. And so this is a bill that will make that much more easier. And so we are hoping to get everybody out to this press conference and rally as many people as possible. If you are not able to make it to the press conference and rally, we are going to be having a toolkit available, and we are also going to be live streaming the press conference and rally on our Instagram at Initiate Justice. And so if you have not followed us on our Instagram or any of our other social media, please do. It's going to be a phenomenal event, powerful, powerful event. We're also going to have some guest speakers as well, sharing their experience. And so I cannot wait. I'm going to drop the information into the chat, but please, please, please RSVP if you are able to make it. Again, it is going to be at the California State Capitol in Sacramento, Wednesday, August 20th at 10 a.m. The RSVP is there. You can go to tinyurl.com/AB1071rally to sign up and get more information. And as always, you can reach out to us if you have any questions. Anything else you want to add to that, Shivani? Did I miss anything?
That was great. Thank you.
Perfect, perfect. Any questions from folks on the rally and the press conference? Awesome, amazing. Well, if questions do come up, please feel free to reach out to us. We are happy to help and support as best as we can. But for now, I am going to pass it over to Ephraim to get us started. I'm really excited, y'all. We are going to be shifting gears into our presentation. We typically do a grounding at this point in time in the meeting, but we wanted to dedicate as much time as possible to this training, since we are only together for an hour and a half, and we also have an activity for y'all to do later on. So we want to give y'all as much time for learning, questions, feedback, all of the good things. So without further ado, passing it over to Ephraim to kick us off.
Yes, and we'll start off with a couple of fun facts. We like to do this. We do them on our in-person sessions. So today, as Adriana mentioned, we will be co-facilitating this. So a couple fun facts about me. My family nickname is Bean Frijol. My babysitter gave me that name. She's called me, and she used to babysit me and my brother, called him Jamon and me Frijol. Frijol just stuck with me, so people call me Bean. Favorite shows of all time: Sopranos, Game of Thrones, Stranger Things. Those are probably like my top three, I would say. A little bit of different everything, right? The gangster, the you know what I mean? Like all my personalities come out of that. And another thing, after being incarcerated 10 years, one of my favorite things to do is really just take road trips. I like being out in the road and just driving. I embrace it all, and I'll pass it over to Adriana to share hers.
So really quickly, mine's kind of simple, y'all, not really. But just a couple of fun facts about me. So one of my favorite games is The Last of Us Part 2. And so if you've been paying attention in the world over the last few years, they did do a TV show that came out, and they just wrapped season 2 up. And I'm really excited for the world to see season 3 because I know what happens and so many people don't. And I'm like, haha. But that is one of my all-time favorite games. I love the story there. It's just absolutely amazing. And songs on repeat. Oh, what's happening? Oh my gosh.
Sorry about
Oh my
that.
gosh. There's a glitch in the matrix. There's a glitch in the matrix. No, but song I have on repeat constantly, that's coming on to my Spotify is Dragging the Line by Tommy Jones and the Shondells. I have no idea why, but I absolutely love that song. And it just feels very summery and very laid back and very like road trippy to me. So it's one of my favorites right now. And so far in 2025, my favorite movies have been Sinners, Fantastic Four, which I just saw was fabulous. The new Superman, which again, very fabulous. Please go see it if you haven't. And K-pop Demon Hunters on Netflix. Super, super phenomenal. If you have not watched it, please do. I now have much more love for the K-pop genre, because just that movie has just turned me on to like a new genre of music, and I already knew about it. But just to be able to experience a little bit more and kind of dig into it a little bit more has been a nice little journey. So that's just a little bit about me. Feel free, y'all, to drop some fun facts about you in the chat. Love to know a little bit more about our members and our community. But that's a little bit about me, y'all. So if you ever see me in public, ask me about Dragging the Line or ask me about The Last of Us, and we can have a conversation about it for hours. But I'll pass it back to you, Ephraim.
Awesome. Thank you, Adriana. Okay, now it's not changing when I want it to change. All right, so a little bit to tonight's agenda. Again, this is a condensed version of our community organizing. So we will be zooming through it. I wouldn't say zooming, but we will be going through it pretty fast. Again, feel free to drop questions, any comments, any things, raise your hand, or and then after definitely we can pause and answer those, or some of our staff will answer those in the chat. So today we're going to go over I did see there are some new people that are joining us for the first time. So we'll go a little bit over who is Initiate Justice, the work that we do, some community or agreements that we'd like to share that we utilize here at Initiate Justice. And then we'll dive into community organizing through intersectional framework and what does that look like, right? So here are some of the things that we'll be doing. Why community organizing, right? Like, why do we do this? Touch on just one part of history of community organizing, jump into intersectionality and what does that mean? How does it look? How do that show up in the work? People-centered language, something that we make sure we utilize in all our spaces as a community, something that y'all can take with you into your communities. And then we'll be going over through a community organizing strategy chart, which is a tool that we utilize, right? In order to do the work. With that, y'all have some fun. We'll have some breakout sessions where you'll get to jump into and kind of strategize together in small groups. So excited for that. So a little bit about who we are. Again, we are a grassroots, a community-based organization for the people, by the people. It's directly impacted by incarceration. Our mission is to end incarceration. And how do we do that? By activating the power of those directly impacted by it, right? We believe there should be no conversations about us without us. And what we like to say, and I always remind folks, when we say system impacted, whether it's you're formerly incarcerated, whether you have had or have a loved one that's incarcerated, or things of that nature. Sometimes some people, I've been in spaces where people just think, oh, well, I'm not formally incarcerated. No, it doesn't mean that you're not system impacted. If you have been impacted by this incarceration system, that is who we are. Those are our people. You are all our people. So so a little bit about the work we do. We provide trainings such as this one. Again, we have done in-person trainings. We have other things. And then we help change policy, right? That is our niche. That is the bread and the butter, so to speak, for Initiate Justice. But again, we're a small team and we can't do this without our community, right? It takes all of us to help change these laws, to help change those hearts and minds. Here is just some of the work that we do. We're a small team. I always like to applaud our team because we're a small team, but we do a lot. And again, we don't do it without you all. Whether it's you showing up in person, you showing up with letters, whatever it might be, right? So we have a program called the Institute of Impacted Leaders, which is a 12-week training program. This is kind of where this training came from today. It's 1 week of that 12-week training that we offer out here for our community of people that are system impacted. Another thing we have inside is we call them the Initiate Justice Activity Work Groups. So similar to the Institute of Impacted Leaders, it's a 12-week community organizing training program in which we run with folks inside. Our inside organizing team do a great job of getting inside the institutions to help folks inside understand like the work that we're doing, uplift their voices, how they can still impact legislation even though they are incarcerated. Another thing we do is send out 4 times a year what we call the Inside Journal. It's a 6-page newsletter that we send into our folks inside to keep folks connected with the outside world and also uplift some of their voices. We've highlighted some of their artwork from in there. We also have 2 pages designed specifically for our policy. So it helps to keep them up to date of where our bills are in the legislative cycle. That way they can follow along. We have calls to action. Again, we want to uplift their voices. Many of our members currently incarcerated have submitted letters of support for many of our bills. Another thing we are doing is Abolition is for Everybody podcast. If you have not checked it out, please go check it out. Now it's just a podcast where we talk about abolition, have some great conversation. We have season 4 out. I was like season 3, season 4 is out now. And Adriana just dropped it in the chat, so thank you, Adriana, for that. Definitely check it out. I think folks I know for myself, I'll say that I used to view abolition as something radical, something extreme. If you are new to the word abolition or to what abolition is, I definitely recommend this podcast. Check it out. And then just definitely do want to remind you, take care of yourself because some of the stories are powerful. And then we have a lot of community events, right? We're out with our community. We have these workshops, policy workshop, we're attending resource fairs, really getting folks involved. Whether it be for our policy, whether it be just to remind them that they can register to vote, things of that nature. And again, as I mentioned, our niche, bread and butter right here, policy change, right? Transforming this current system of harm and creating like what is true public safety, right? We know that this system of harm that is in place, this punitive system of just locking people up, throwing away the key, does not work for our community, does not make our community safer. So we help pass legislation that upholds those abolitionist values that we hold to help change laws. Another thing that and one of the last things I'll add here is really supporting our bills, but not just our bills as Initiate Justice, but our community partners, any criminal justice bills that are going to really support our community, right? Making sure that we are there also supporting those bills. Something that we've been experiencing the last 2 years is defending all the progress that we made in the last 10 years against very harmful bills, these tough on crime laws, things of that nature. And these last 2 years, there has been a bunch. So again, we got to hold that line to continue to progress and keep what we've changed so far in bringing our people home, bringing our communities home, and making our communities truly safer. And Adriana, you got this one?
Yep, I will hop in and take it from here. So now that y'all know, and thank you, Efrain, for walking everybody through that. We, especially for new folks, we really want to make sure that y'all have a good understanding of what it is that we do as an organization. But before we move forward in the presentation or in the training, one of the things that we want to go over is community agreements. And so we are going to be talking about community organizing tonight, coming together as community members, no matter where you might be in the state, but coming together to make real impactful change in our communities, whether that be at a local level or at the state level. And so in order to do that effectively, you want to make sure that you are coming into this space and showing up as best as you can. And for what that means for Initiate Justice is we tend to go into spaces with sort of an understanding that we have these community agreements, right? We typically share this in our Institute of Impacted Leaders. And so those who are participants in our Institute of Impacted Leaders program, they frequently see these community agreements, but we wanted to bring it to you this evening because it's the very foundation of community organizing. You cannot organize together unless you have an understanding of what you are organizing for and how you want to do that. And so for us at Initiate Justice, one of the things that we always say is we're experts of our own stories and we respect others' experiences. That simply means that everybody has their own life to live and everybody has experienced something in their own way. And while we may have similar stories, we experience similar things in very different ways. And so we always walk into understanding that and not judging anybody else for what they've experienced or how they might have experienced something differently from us. We also understand that language matters, and so we use language that empowers others. And so in some spaces, you may see language like inmate, felon, um, uh, something of that nature. You may see language that describes people by what they have done. And what we like to do here is we like to use people-centered language. So instead of saying things like inmate and felon, we say person who is incarcerated, person with an incarcerated loved one, person who has experienced, trauma and things like that, as opposed to labeling people by their experience, if that makes sense. Something else we do is we are very intentional about how we show up. And so one of the things that we quite often say is we take space and make space. And so we want to encourage you all to do that this evening as we are going through this through this training. If you are the type of person that normally stays back, doesn't ask too many questions and just kind of listens, we want to challenge you tonight to plug in, lean forward, and ask questions and take up space because you're very much allowed to. On the other hand, if you are the person that is always taking up space, not shy about raising your hand, not shy about giving your opinion, we love that, and we need lots of people in this world with that energy. But we also want to challenge you to maybe take a step back and allow somebody else to take up that space. So that's one of the things that we encourage folks to do. Always learning is one. We are always learning, even myself. I am constantly learning new things every day. Sometimes I have to unlearn and relearn again. And so we are always learning, always evolving, and we always advocate from an intersectional and abolitionist lens. And so we will go over the terms intersectional and abolitionist in a little bit. But essentially, what it means is we see everybody, and we do not do this work with the intention of leaving folks behind. And so that is the intention, and that is the value that we carry. And then we always welcome folks to add to this list. Community agreements are living documents, right? We can always add to them, we can take things away based on how groups evolve and change. And so we encourage you to, if you have an idea, anything you would like to add to these community agreements or that you think we should add to community agreements, drop it in the chat. We love to see suggestions from community on how we can continue to make our spaces safer. And we also want you to carry these agreements with you when you do the activity later. Okay, remember that. Remember about intersectionality, abolitionist lens, remember that language matters, and remember to show up with intention and to take space and make space. So that'll all make sense in a little bit, but we can go to the next slide, Ephraim. Awesome. So before we get into the nitty gritty, we want to pose a question to all of you. And you can answer this in the chat, you can raise your hand, but we just want to take a couple minutes to ask this question. What is one thing you think needs to change in your community? And how do you think that can happen? How do you think we can change it? I'll give folks maybe a minute to think of something, but I can definitely model an answer as an example. Right. So I live in Stockton, California. And one of the things I think that desperately needs to change in my community is to bring back more fun family friendly activities. Things like golf land, activities, recreational activities for kids and family members to do. When I was growing up, there was so many things to do. We had a skating rink, we had golf land, we had a few different types of pizza parlors that had arcades and all of these things. And I don't really see those around in the community anymore. I think they're slowly but surely starting to want to come back. But I think you need things like that in the community for families and kids in order for it to thrive. It's just one of the things. And I think we can change that by continuing to speak up with my local government, right? Like my city council, my county board of supervisors, and continuing to advocate for them to bring in more businesses that want to bring in that have these types of elements, right? These family friendly, fun elements, right? Bring back golf land to Stockton. That's my campaign. Bring back golf land to Stockton. And I think that would be a powerful campaign to do. I think people would get behind it. And I think Golfland would be like, hey, we were there once, we can go back again. And so I think that's definitely one thing that needs to change in my community. But it is not subjective, or it's not limited to policy. So I really want y'all to sky's the limit with this question, right? Nothing's too big, nothing's too small. So feel free, like I said, drop stuff into the chat or raise your hand and come off mute if you would like to share. But we are going to be running with this theme of community change for the entire evening, for the next hour and 4 minutes. So really want to make sure that folks have the opportunity to share if they would like. I see Shivani dropped hers in the chat, so thank you for that. Oh, you live in Oakland. Community, more investment in personal autonomy and compassionate care when it comes to mental health and substance use response. I love that. And she said we can do this by political education on mental health, substance use, destigmatizing, and skill people up to respond compassionately. Yes, all of that, all of those things. Norma, I love your answer too. She says, in my community, we need more affordable housing and dignified paying jobs. So I love that. Both of those are rooted in care, right? Care and compassion, right? We desperately need affordable housing, right? We need housing prices to come down. And that doesn't mean people need to build more homes. They just need to make the homes that we already have more affordable and accessible to people, right? And that's one way. And I love that. And I definitely agree that there needs to be more people skilled up to respond compassionately to mental health challenges and mental health crises, as opposed to responding with punitive justice. I think that's absolutely what we need more of in all communities. We have our first hand. Zochita, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I think that my community needs more like programs for formerly youth that's been incarcerated, for youth who've been formerly incarcerated, like more programs to like help them, view their strengths and change, the strength in how they work in the streets and everything, and change that into something positive, something healthy. So like more youth programs for formerly incarcerated youth.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing. Christine, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. So my name is Christine, and something that I think that needs to change in our community, the way we think and change. And I was just talking with my daughter about this. Those extracurricular activities for our children after school. I remember so much happening where you included families, and it was a lot of it was community based, so it had nothing really to do with the school district. But there was events that don't happen anymore after school, and we don't know about families, and that's why a lot of I think the stuff is happening behind closed doors, because as a nation, basically, as you know, as a community here I live in Palmdale, California. There's a lot of child abuse out here, and I think that has a lot to do with because we don't open our doors like we used to community events and invite families, that are experiencing trauma situations and stuff. I think that used to be a real big outlet for school age children, and I think that we don't have that anymore. So opening the public school, the doors, and our hearts and our families to those communities and those families that are harboring trauma, I think that that's something that's very important. Thank you.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's such a big one. Again, a space for our community to go to, right? That is not system based, right? Something that's community based. And then where people can actually have somewhere to go to talk to, right? Somewhere, some type of healing, and talk about what's going on and things of that nature, creating those safe spaces in our communities. And then I know I want to uplift Crystal Mendoza's. She says in Riverside, we need more unity, parks and rec centers. I strongly believe that communities would thrive, right? I think, we see what we're facing right now in our communities. Yes, unity. We need more unity. We need more people come together, really support each other, right? I remember growing up, a lot has changed and it's so different. And we knew all our neighbors. And it's like now I was like, oh, wait, who's that? And they're like, oh, they've been there for like a year and a half. And it's like, what the hell? Like people don't even know that. And they're like neighbors or they're down the street. And it's crazy to see that. But I agree, just creating more community, more unity. Katie also adds education about disability, greater social support for disabled people and caregivers. I love that. Oh, and Shivani actually just put about the what I was just saying about people not knowing their neighbors and stuff like that. So just really echoing. So great thoughts on some of this stuff. And keep that question in the forefront. You know, uh and Dolores has added some grad night incentives in our communities. You know, love all of these. Thank you all for indulging us, for sharing. But just keep this question on the forefront as we move forward with our training today.
Thank y'all so much. I love all of those. I feel like this is my slide. Is this my slide? This is my
Yep.
slide. We be tag teaming y'all, so forgive us. But this next thing, we're just going to quickly go over like why and what, right? So what is it? What is community organizing and why? Why are we doing this? Why are we talking about this? And so one of the things that I have had the privilege to learn, and it's been an honor learning it over the last few years, is that nobody can make huge change on their own, right? Nobody makes lasting change on their own. We all need help sometimes. We need community. We as human beings are not meant to do things completely alone by ourselves. We're not meant to move mountains by ourselves, right? And so that's what community organizing is all about. It's about making lasting change together as a united front, right? And so long-term solutions happen when people work together, and this can be something that is officially recognized, like an organization. This can also be neighborhood groups. This is also can be community members in your local neighborhoods, your schools, other businesses and things like that. So it can be anybody. Anybody can be a community organizer. These are folks who bring other people together to simply do the work, right? So whether that's sharing information, whether that is disseminating information, bringing folks together into space, right? Spreading the word. All of this is part of organizing. And so this training today, and this is actually, fun fact, this training is actually taken from our Institute of Impacted Leaders curriculum. So for those that are maybe unable to dedicate 12 weeks of time to our Institute, hopefully this will at least set a nice foundation for what you can possibly dig into at a later time. So that's what this training is going to go through today. We are going to talk about what it means to be a community organizer. We're going to give you some vocabulary, a quick history lesson, just to put it in perspective. And we're going to allow folks to practice and fine tune your own community organizing skills that we know that you already have. But now you're just going to have an opportunity to fine tune them and figure out like, oh, wait, I do have this. I do know how to do this. So again, these are folks, community organizers, bring people together. We typically have a shared political interest in order to fight collectively for our common goals. And so we are sometimes trained in many ways, many different ways. And this can be an official training program like the Institute of Impacted Leaders. Some learn this information in school, like colleges and things of that nature. And others just do it as a natural response to a shared experience of either oppression or discrimination. And so that is the most important thing to remember as we move forward is anybody can be a community organizer. Everyone that is on this call today, whether you have gone through a training or not, you attend these meetings, you get the information, and you probably tell somebody about it. That makes you a community organizer. There's different levels, but everybody is a community organizer in some way, I have found out. But if there's no questions on this slide, we can go to the vocabulary next.
Yeah, so just some of the vocabulary that we will be. Oh, I heard an echo. That was awful. Some of the vocabulary we'll be going through again. What is a community organizer, right? Someone that brings someone together with that has those shared political interests, the oppression, right? People that are going to come together that are going to advocate and fight collectively for those common goals, right? Oppression, we talked about it, you know, the mistreatment of a group of people by a political party or social system, by political party or social system. You know, we see what's going on in our communities right now, right? And we've seen it through what's happened in our, you know, nation historically. Another one is liberation, right? When we finally achieve that freedom, whether, you know, I don't think we're all the way free, right? But when you finally are released from that state of oppression, another thing that we're gonna you will be hearing about, seeing, are really the strategies used in community organizing, right? And that's just simply the plan of action organizers use in order to achieve these goals. And then the tactics, right? What are those specific actions to make it all work, right? To make it all come together. And again, there's multiple tactics, there's multiple strategies that are used, and we'll dive into some of them here shortly, some that were used historically. So I'll pass it over back to you. Any questions on those, I should say, actually?
Yeah, and I was just gonna add, if there are any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or raise your hand. But these, like Efrain said, these are terms that are gonna come up later on, but these are terms that are also gonna come up on your journey of being a community organizer, right? So these are things that you are going to want to know, going to want to understand. You're gonna want to understand the difference between a strategy and a tactic, right? And the difference between oppression, discrimination, liberation, because that's what we're working for ultimately, is liberation. But tactics, the definition as it states, these are specific actions that people are taking, and the strategies are the plans of the action, right? And so we have a plan, and then we have specific steps that we are taking with that plan. And those will be known as the tactics. But we are going to get into more of that, and define more of that stuff and give you an actual examples of what those things actually look like. But we can go to the next slide. As an example, something that we share in our institute is the civil rights movement. So we share this example because it is still very, very relevant. We are still voting and fighting, right, for civil rights in our communities across the nation, right, as well as other parts of the world, but specifically here in the United States, and even more so here in California. We have seen the horrible, horrible ICE raids taking place throughout our state, most recently in Los Angeles. And so we are still fighting for the civil rights of people to be respected by this government. And so, as an example of a strategy, a community organizing strategy, and goals and tactics, right? We have Black people in America who came together or organized, right? So that's another term for organizing, is just we're coming together, right? So they came together to end Jim Crow segregation in the South, which were a set of laws that treated Black people as second-class citizens. And so there were various laws that said no congregating. We had whites only drinking fountains, whites only spaces. You had certain parts of public transportation that were unaccessible to African Americans at the time, as well as a host of other things and laws that said you can't do this or you can't be here if you are of this ethnicity, right? And so we had people coming together. People have been harmed, brutalized, and experienced so much terror during this time. And so African Americans, Black people, as well as other ethnicities, right? So there was Hispanics involved, there were Mexicans, there was Puerto Ricans, there were even white folks involved. So there was people involved, y'all. And they came together and they said, we're not going to take this anymore. Right. And so they started to come up with a bunch of different ways that they were going to shut down the system. And so their strategies were to interrupt the day-to-day flow of the systems in society, as well as to show the world how bad things really were, right? So they utilized different types of tactics, but they also showed the press, right? They showed the world what was going on. And so the goal for this whole movement was rights for everybody. So the first thing you want to do when you are establishing a campaign, right? When you have an idea and you're like, this is what I want to do, this is what we need to do, this is the issue, you want to establish a goal for that issue, right? So for the civil rights movement, their goal was to just achieve civil rights, right? So that everybody can be treated equally in this society. The strategies was like, okay, how are we going to achieve that goal? We're going to interrupt the day-to-day flow of social systems, right? That's the strategy. But how do we do that? How do we do the strategy? We do the strategy by engaging in different tactics. And those tactics, one of them was to engage in a bus boycott. And so the Montgomery bus boycott was organized, and folks decided that they were no longer going to take public transportation. And so they carpooled, they walked, They did whatever they could to get where they needed to go without taking without taking the bus. And that crippled the system. They lost a whole lot of money. And we know that when people start losing money and their pockets get hurt, they start to make changes. And so that is one of the tactics used in the civil rights movement. Other tactics were things like sit-ins, marches, nonviolent protests, things of that nature. These were all tactics to interrupt the system. So that is the primary thing that you want to remember when you are organizing around an issue. So take voting rights, for example, or civil rights, or anything like that, immigration. You want to have tactics that are going to interrupt the day-to-day flow. Things cannot be business as usual. Folks may have heard that term recently in the recent years with all of the different protests that we've had in our country and in our state. No business as usual. And so we engage in these different tactics to achieve our overall goal. But are there any questions here that folks might have? Again, feel free to drop them in the chat or raise your hand throughout, and we'll make sure to flag those. Awesome. You can go to the next slide, Efrain.
Yeah, so I'll read this quote by Audre Lorde. If you are not familiar, definitely I'd suggest or I invite you all to read some of her work. There's no such thing as single issue struggle because we do not live single issued lives, right? Again, the oppression that I mean, for me, like, for example, just want to bring up like what's happening right now with the immigration, the attacks on our community, right? We see the different races, the different ethnicities, different people of different backgrounds coming together in support and really organizing and protesting, and providing that mutual aid for one another, for our communities, because we know, right? They come for one, they're gonna come for us all eventually, right? There's also so I just wanted to really share that, where it's that's what comes up for me right now when I read that again. And every time I read this, is something different comes up. But if anything is coming up for if anyone wants to come off mute or drop in the chat, just what does this quote bring up for you all, or what does this mean for you?
You can go to the next slide, Efrain. Awesome. So definitely feel free to drop in the chat if that quote definitely inspires you in any type of way. We definitely want to hear folks' thoughts. Thank you for sharing yours, Efrain. We're going to move through to just talking about what intersectionality is. And so earlier we talked about in one of our community agreements is that we approach this work through an intersectional lens, right? And so who here, and you don't have to come off mute, but just drop either in the chat or put thumbs up if you do not know what intersectionality means. So if you do not know what intersectionality means, drop something in the chat, say me, I don't know what it means, or put a thumbs up just to give us a general idea of how many people know this term. Is it new to you, or is this something folks have seen before? All right, so I see one person said they don't know what it is, so that's fantastic. And I'm saying that's fantastic because I love explaining things to people. Oh, okay, two people, I love it. So intersectionality is basically a concept that describes that we all live at the intersections of life and have overlapping experiences in these different categories. And so we all are a part of a race or an ethnic group, right? We all have a nationality, right? Because we all live somewhere. We all came from somewhere in terms of citizenship or whatnot. We all have a nationality, a home country. We all have a gender identity. We all have a sexual orientation. We may or may not all have a disability, but we all have abilities, right? Whether those are alternately abled abilities or regularly abled abilities, we all have some type of way of movement or something of that nature. And so this term simply is describing that oftentimes when we are experiencing struggle or disadvantages, We are not experiencing it just simply in one category, right? So as an example, I am an African American woman who and identify as cisgender, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm obviously, well, not obviously, but I am an American, and I don't have any physical disabilities that one can see, but I do have other struggles that I have. And so when I experience maybe a form of oppression, like incarceration or something of that nature, I'm not just experiencing it as a an American, or I'm also experiencing it as a Black American. I'm also experiencing it as a woman, a Black woman, and depending on my sexual orientation, I could be experiencing it in those ways too. And oppression has a way of getting to all of us in some way. And so it's really a nuanced term, but hopefully I'm leaving you with some understanding. Please let me know if I am not. If you have questions, if you want clarity, drop it in the chat or raise your hand. But how I've understood intersectionality to be is that we experience things at the intersections of life. I cannot separate my Blackness from my womanhood, and I cannot separate that from anything else about myself. And so I have to keep all of that in mind when I'm trying to change a system, right? Because it has to serve all of me. It can't just serve a piece of my identity, it has to serve all of my identities. And you can go to the next slide, Ephraim. And then what is oppression? And so again, these are things that we need to consider when we are trying to organize and make change. And so we have to understand about oppression that it is very much a system thing that's happening. And so oppression happens when a system is creating laws or some other treatment that makes it unfair or cruel for people to live, right? It prevents people from having opportunities, like jobs, housing, freedom, and it really, really harms communities and the overall state and nation. And so oppression is very much not a good thing, but it is different from discrimination in the fact that oppression is a system. It is interwoven with the laws that society has, and our customs and our practices. Whereas discrimination is more on an individual basis. Like I can personally discriminate you against you, but I can't like oppress you individual to individual. And then privilege on the flip side is what we have not earned. These are unearned benefits, right? That are just given to people that fit into a particular group. So if you've heard things like male privilege, white privilege, things like that, that just simply means that there are some benefits that come with you being a part of a group, right? And so it doesn't mean that you've earned it. It doesn't mean that you've done anything. It simply means that we just have this benefit. And so as an example, I come from a two-parent household, right? So I have the privilege of being raised in a two-parent household all my life. I did not earn that at all. It's just something that happened because my parents decided to stay together. Other people maybe don't have that privilege, right? And so it's all about just looking at different things. We can also look at it when we talk about me. I'm able to walk, I can get up, I can run, I can jump. Other people do not have that privilege, right? I didn't earn my legs, I was just born with them. And so those are some concepts that we need to think about when we are organizing, because again, we have to keep in mind the various privileges and the various forms of oppression that people might be experiencing. And you can go to the next slide, Ephraim. And again, feel free to drop questions in the chat. Team, if there are questions that are flagged that we missed, please let us know so we can answer those. But yeah, feel free to drop those questions. And I'll pass it back to you, Ephraim.
Yeah, one of the things, just really thinking about these two questions, right? Like looking at how are you oppressed, how are you privileged? Like when we're doing this community organizing work, this has helped, and I'll say personally, this has helped me out really understanding those and how I can use some of these to my advantage, especially when it comes to being privileged, right? In certain spaces, right? Even just like the simple fact of me being a man in this space, right? Whatever it might be, knowing that I could utilize that to the benefit of the organizing work that we are doing. And again, it varies, right? It varies depending on what system it is that you're fighting, or you know, what type of work you're doing. But this is something that I like, I don't want to say challenge, but I invite you all just to really think about, when you're doing this work, is really identifying like, how are you oppressed, right? And how are you privileged? Um, and again, when I was first asked this question of how are you oppressed, when I did the Institute of Impacted Leaders, I was like, oh, I'm not, I'm fine. But again, understanding that I'm a Latino man coming, my parents both were immigrants of Mexico, and knowing all of that, there's various ways that I have been oppressed in regards to that, right? The fact that I'm formerly incarcerated, right? It's a form of my oppression, right? Thinking of all those and how do we utilize that? Again, it's a way for us to be empowered by some of this and utilizing some of our life experiences and using those to our benefit. I always looked at, when I was first asked the question of this being like a crutch of, oh, I'm leaning on this and like, woe is me type of thing. But I finally understood that no, this is not. But once I understand this, how do I utilize this in the movement, in the space, and for the work? So definitely invite you all to ask yourself that question. Ask yourself those questions. This one of my favorite slides, one of my favorite topics in regards to person-centered language, really understanding that in our spaces, in the work that we do, language matters, right? We should not be utilizing our experiences or our circumstances, and utilizing the terms that society has put on those based on our experiences or our circumstances, really to hold us that, right? Because we are more than that, understanding that we are people first, right? So this is some examples of what we use in our space, because we do work with currently and formerly incarcerated people, system impacted people. So there are some examples of just some of the language like that are rooted in oppression. These are, you know, systems that are rooted in oppression, right? I know even for myself, like calling myself my last name, um, you know, because I'm formerly incarcerated, a lot of people used to call me that, right? Like the first word, and I hate saying it, but I'll say it for the sake of this training, inmate, right? Oftentimes that was a word that we were called inside, right? Whether it be by COs, by the judges, by whatever it might have been, right? Even out here in the community, right? Understanding that some of these I also will bring up that, you know, like using the term felon or convict or things of that nature, right? Like I was downing myself by utilizing, I was oppressing myself because I used to take pride in some of these terms. And understanding that I am much more than that. One of the things that we used to do inside in some of our groups was really began calling ourselves by our first name basis, right? Because again, it brings out the humanity, it brings out the person in you. So I think this is like something that is critical, when you're doing the work, understanding that, language does matter, right? And inviting folks to look at it a different way, because I know so many people in the spaces that I've been of being around formerly incarcerated people, like a lot of these terms are still used. And again, it's not calling folks out on it, but really calling them in and understanding why we shouldn't be using some of these terms and how these have been built on a system of oppression. So any questions in regards to that, or any of my teammates want to add anything?
Nothing to add. I dropped it into the chat.
Right.
Just again echoing that it's totally okay for, if you are not in a place where you are using like the term like person in prison, or person, with an incarcerated loved one, or a woman with an incarcerated loved one. I know a lot of folks still refer to themselves as prison wives, right? And that is totally okay. One of the things that we don't want to do is tell somebody else how they should be identifying themselves. But we can have that conversation, and you can have that conversation, right? Of, exploring the whys, right? Why do we use this language, and what does it mean? How does it make us feel? And so definitely just encouraging, if you do still use it, no judgment, totally okay. Just plug in, lean in, and learn how to, and not learn, but find new ways and explore new ways of describing people, including yourself. And that's always hard to do. So remember, one of our community agreements, we are all learning and always continuously learning. You can go to the next slide, Efrain, so we can get these folks started with the activity that we want to do. We have kind of gone through the whys of community organizing and sort of identified some terminology between oppression, intersectionality, identified why language matters. And so one of the things that we want to expose you all and provide to y'all is this fancy, lovely little chart that is the community organizing strategy chart. Now, we actually use this again in our Institute of Impacted Leaders. So you all are getting a treat by getting access to this wonderful, wonderful information. But this is a chart that we can use when we are wanting to organize around a particular issue, right? And so we might have a goal that we want to identify, but you can see from the chart, we have various strategies that we can try, that we can identify. We can identify different support in terms of like constituents, allies, opponents. We can identify targets that we want to approach, right? So people that we know that have the power to make change and who we need to talk to. We can identify what our tactics are going to be, right? So in the example of the civil rights movement, right? If our strategy is to mess up the money, how are we going to do that, right? What are the steps that we're going to take? And then we can also identify our resources, right? What do we have? What do we need? What do we have, right? Resources can be things like people, money, information, places, right? Sometimes all like the resource that you need is a physical space to be able to get people together, right? So maybe that's something that's an identified need, or maybe you already have it, right? And so this chart we use to kind of walk through how we are going to build out our campaign. And so we have used this in the past for one of our own campaigns. Ephraim, you can go to the next slide. One of the campaigns that we used this strategy chart on in the past was to restore voting rights for people who have been impacted by incarceration. And so you can see that we identified two primary strategies, and then we had some other, like a third option just in case. So like our primary strategy was to pass a constitutional amendment that would have placed an initiative on the ballot to restore voting rights. So this was ACA 6, which became Prop 17, which was passed by voters, right? So people on parole now have the right to vote restored. But before we got to that step, we had to figure out, okay, how are we going to do this? So we had to identify their strategies to pass that amendment, right, and a ballot initiative, and make sure that the law is implemented fairly and accurately and correctly. So we had to identify people that would be impacted by this. These would be the constituents, our allies, people who maybe not directly impacted, but are very supportive. And then we had to find out, like, who are the ops? Who is going to get on here and tell us no, no, no at every corner, right? Those would be our opponents. And so on and so forth, right? You have primary targets, secondary targets, primary and secondary tactics, right? So these are things that you're going to try first. And if those don't work, then maybe we try these. And if those don't work, then maybe we try these, right? And so you can build out many, many different plans to achieve your goal. And again, identifying resources that we had and that we needed, right? So we knew that we had a strong presence in Sacramento. We knew that we were able to prep for the ballot initiative campaign, and we had some more media coverage. But what we needed was more members, a strong impacted membership. We needed more allies, and we needed a budget, right? And so we were able to identify all those things. And then once we have identified it, then we can put in action steps in place to achieve that. And so one thing I will share about this chart is you're looking at it and you're like, oh God, we have to fill all this out. Like when we are trying to organize around an issue, we have to identify all these things. And the answer is yes and no. This is both a long-term project and a living document. Not everything is going to be identified on the chart right away. Sometimes you are just going to be able to identify your goal. and then have conversations around that until you figure out, okay, this is our strategy that we're going to go with. These are our tactics. Maybe it might take you a minute to figure out who your opponents are, or who your allies are, right? You might have to do some research, and you might have to ask questions and have meetings with people. But definitely, Norma, it is a marathon. It is not a race. And so when you see this form, or when you are provided this form, don't freak out thinking like, oh my gosh, I have to complete it all. You absolutely do not have to. The goal is just to kind of help you understand like what's going to be helpful to your campaign overall. And so it's a template that provides you a place to put all of your stuff. Any of my team members want to add anything else about this strategy chart before we kind of move forward into the activity? And then obviously, folks, if you have questions, please let us know.
Yeah, I would just say like, don't be overwhelmed by it, because when I first saw it, I was like, what is all of this? Right. And it's gonna look different, right? On this case, like this sample here that we're seeing here for restoring by for people impacted by incarceration, right? There's a lot more in it. But again, when we talk about community organizing, again, this is just a tool for you all to take for yourselves, to your communities, to your organization, whatever it might be, right? And for some things that you are organizing against, right, it can be so small and you don't really need to fill out the whole chart, right? You won't need to fill out the whole chart, but some of this, because you'll get the job done easier, sometimes it's harder, right? Again, I love what someone put in the chat where it's like it's not a marathon, it's a marathon, not a race, right? And then really wanted to uplift what Shabani said, because this is why being in groups like this, like we are in and what we're going to do right now, is really, you'd be surprised of how many people, how many of these relationships you already have, and how some people in the room with you at that moment already have some of this information that could be added. It always happens in the Institute of Impacted Leaders program. When we do breakout groups, it's like you see just the connections of folks who are like, oh, I know how to do that. We could go this way. We could go this route. Oh, I know somebody, right? And again, this is why it's so important to come together and community organize, and strategize with one another.
Absolutely.
Shabani and Alyssa, I didn't know if you had anything.
I added mine to the chat, but I think the only thing I put was like, fill out what you can. Don't be overwhelmed. It's okay to not have the answers right away. As well. I think you can brainstorm, circle back to it. And also like when it comes to the community organizing strategy chart, don't think that any issue is too small. If it is an issue that you see in your community, it is an issue that maybe you're not, more than likely, you're not the only one experiencing. So never think that there is an issue too small that's not worth organizing around, because more than likely you are not the only person experiencing what is going on.
Absolutely. You can organize around getting more trash cans in a public park, right? And so there's nothing too big. You can organize around voting rights, right? Or just simply like, we need more trash cans in the park, right? People are littering. It's not okay. Save the earth, right? So we can organize around anything. And again, these issues aren't limited to public safety. There's public safety issues like prisons, jails, but then there's also like healthcare, community, housing, mental health issues. There's so many things, and we all experience a myriad of things on a daily. And so we really just want to encourage you to take this information. We do not expect you to be an expert in an hour, right? An hour and a half, 2 hours. We do not expect that of anybody here. We share that with our institute, right? We tell them they're there for 2.5 hours, and we tell them we're not expecting you to be an expert at the end of 2.5 hours. We simply want to bring this information to y'all tonight, expose it to you, provide you with the chart, with the tool, and simply allow you to start exploring and utilizing it as best as you can and as you see fit. So before we move into the activity, are there any questions? I do see. Is that a question? Hold on. I asked myself who else is missing. Oh, that is a good question to ask. Norma, who else is missing? Who else has hidden power that can help move the needle or can help influence? That is such an important question and a great question to ask when trying to organize and fill out this chart. But it doesn't look like there's any other questions. Nobody's raising their hand. So Efrain, you can go to the next slide, or the activity group slide, so we can kind of explain the activity. So we are going to be putting y'all into some breakout rooms. And so again, we want you to use the guiding question from at the beginning of today, which is, what is one thing, it says think, but what is one thing that you think needs to change, that you want to change in your community? And what are some ways that that can happen, right? And so we're going to be putting y'all into groups 2 to 3, as opposed to 3 to 5, just so that it's a little bit more intimate and there's not an overwhelming amount of people here. So that should be good. But we want y'all to work together to simply discuss this chart. Now, the directions say to establish a campaign to address an issue you want to solve in your community. And I will be honest in saying that when we do this in Institute, more than half the time, people are only ever getting to their goal. They're like, oh, we just identified a goal, or like, we've been trying to figure out the goal, right? And so the ask is not to have something filled out and figured out and worked out by the time you in 15 minutes, right? That's not the ask. The ask is to get with your group, introduce yourselves, obviously, talk about what's going on in your communities, and just talk about, like, hey, what is something that needs to be changed in your community, right? And how do you think that could be done? And just simply start talking about it, because that's how this chart gets filled out, is through conversation, as opposed to going down the line and asking questions and things like that. And as you conversate, those boxes start to fill themselves out pretty organically. So we are going to be putting y'all into some breakout rooms. We did share the community organizing strategy chart with everybody, so you do have the link. It is there in the chat. You can go, everybody is a viewer, so if you want to make edits or any changes, you will have to just simply make your own copy of it. Other than that, you do have access to it to be able to look at and reference, and we will also, again, broadcast the link in the breakout rooms. But we want to give folks at least 10, 12 minutes. It's 7:39, so we want to be respectful of y'all's time. But like 10, 12 minutes, 15 at the max, to discuss with one another and chat with one another and figure out maybe what y'all might want to work on as a community. And it's okay if y'all live in different communities, because that's what statewide organizing is all about, coming together from different communities and making change for all of us for the better. But Efrain, is there anything else you want to add before I open up these breakout rooms, or does anybody have any questions?
Let's go.
All righty, not seeing any questions, so I'm gonna open up these breakout rooms. Once I open up the rooms, for those that might be unfamiliar, a link will pop up, not a link, but a little window will pop up that says you've been invited to such and such breakout room. You're gonna click that join room, and you will be entered into your breakout room. So the rooms are opened, and feel free to go in there. Remember to introduce yourselves, and we'll bring you back in about 10, 12 minutes.
Hi B. Hi,
Hey, what's up?
good. I have to log off. I was trying to hold off as long as I could. But I have a couple deadlines and I still have to finish prep for our IJ in district meeting for tomorrow. So I want to
Thank you
make
for doing
sure
that.
that Monday.
I said thank you for doing that, and then reach out to me if you have any support. I added all the stuff to the note stock.
Yeah, so I still have to go over tonight. I have to go over some of the bill fact sheets that you sent over. We'll be talking about 2 IJ bills and then doing the invitation for the cohort graduation.
Nice.
Awesome. Thank you, Flower. So good seeing you.
I love it.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. I'll
Have
be
a good night.
Yeah, likewise. Nice to
Get
see
some
you.
rest after when you can, for sure.
I'm
Get some
trying.
rest.
I was slammed today all day. So I'm gonna try to get some rest before our ledge visit tomorrow.
Nice. Well, thank you. We appreciate you for being here and hanging with us.
You have a good night.
Yep. Bye.
You guys wanna hop into one of the
Back. Welcome back, y'all. How was that? Nice, nice. Well, folks are wrapping up conversations in those breakout rooms, so they will be trickling back into the main room in just a bit. And so we're gonna do a quick just share out, give folks an opportunity to just maybe share like how that felt for them, what folks talked about, if they feel comfortable. And yeah, just addressing any other questions that folks might be ruminating on. And everybody's coming back. Nice. I know when I'm in a breakout room, I always wait till the very end until it kicks me out fully. I always wait.
Good conversation. I was on a roll. Not just kidding.
Yeah, you were. You friend, go ahead. You can continue. Whatever you say. No, I'm just kidding.
We
I
will
love it.
We
too.
jumped into a great conversation. I jumped into a breakout room where they're having some good dialogue in there. So
We did
Nice.
too.
No, that's exactly what we want to hear. Coming back into the big space, we want to hear like, how was that for everybody? How did that feel? Just kind of talking through like, yeah, what is it how do we identify, how do we, figure out what issues we need to mobilize around, campaign around, all of that thing. So want to give folks some space to share either feelings, thoughts, reflections, questions, or if you want to share like what your conversation was about, feel free. We have a couple of minutes and then we'll move into our close, make final announcements, and then let folks go.
Yeah. It was funny you put Jaime in the same chat room.
See, Zoom did that. I just simply said put people 2 to 3 in a room, and Zoom did that. So it was divine Zoom intervention.
Yeah, it was cool. You know,
Nice.
all these things are really like when we talk about community. You kind of meet kind of the similar people, but like experience, I've probably treads the path before, just like Efrain treads one before me. I tread one before him, and so Jaime could kind of get a taste of his new freedom and coming into the community and what really community is about. You know, so we kind of were breaking that down a little bit in the session and stuff like that. So it was cool.
Love it. Love it. Anybody else want to share? You can also feel free to drop your thoughts in the chat. Um,
I will.
Go ahead,
I was
Sherry.
I was I was lucky to get Crystal, who actually is I'm going into the next stage in this saga where he's getting shorter on time, and I've got to start worrying about how to help him, how to get him reassimilated, and her group does that. And so it was very advantageous that we were connected and we had a nice talk about it. And I will be calling on her as questions come up. So thank
I
you guys.
I love it. Yes, I love it when new connections are made. And yes, please y'all stay in touch for sure. I love that.
I want
Anybody
to say
else?
something really quick. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I was in a group with Ava and I'm so sorry, I can't remember all the ladies, and Ephraim popped in there as well. Catherine, I think. I like how we ping ponged off each other, and I think that we definitely understood each other. So when I didn't have the right words, they were able to, take those words out of my mouth. I think one thing that I need to focus on and work on is speaking. Publicly. I think that's something I really have to practice because I do get stuttery a lot. But I think being in a group and sharing with each other, coming up with tactics and strategies. The chart really did help because we figured out. Well, I kind of figured out what phase we were in as far as planning and strategizing and community resource building and stuff. So, yeah, it helped me to organize thoughts, I guess.
I love it. Yeah, these spaces can also be helpful for, working that stuff out. I know I still get a little bit nervous when I'm public speaking and things like that. So I think it's something that we can all resonate with. So you're definitely not alone. But before we wrap up, are there any questions about anything that we have gone over today? I know we went through things super quickly, super fast. But was there anything that stuck out with you that you're like, oh, I need to circle back and ask this question? Awesome. I'm glad. I'm glad. It means even though we went fast, we explained it good. So I'm happy about that. We are going to drop our emails into the chat. I know I've provided my email to a couple folks already tonight, but we want to drop our emails into the chat, Ephraim and I, just in case any questions do come up. Folks want to reach out, connect, learn a little bit more about Initiate Justice, what we do here, all of the things on either the policy or organizing side. You can definitely reach out to us and we will connect you. I did drop some last minute reminders into the chat. So I'll do it one more time just in case folks may have missed it. And so we have some events coming up. So I want to remind you to join us next month for our September community monthly meeting. We will be doing a condensed version of our Policy 101 workshop. And so tonight was all about community organizing. Next month, we will dive into Policy 101 to give y'all more of an understanding on the policy process, legislation, and how all of that works and how you can plug in and be more civically engaged in your community at the state level. So that is coming next month. It will be a hybrid meeting. And so we will be doing it on Zoom. And typically we host the in-person portion. We have always thought about doing it at our downtown LA office. This time we might host it in a different location. So that location will be announced very soon. But either way, please RSVP so that we can connect with you and let you know where that in-person location is going to be if you're in that area. Also, a reminder to RSVP and sign up for the Racial Justice Act press conference and rally on the 20th. And if you are so inclined, fill out and complete our interest form for future cohorts of the Institute of Impacted Leaders. We are midway through our summer 2025 cohorts, one in San Diego, one in Sacramento. And so we will be coming back next summer with new locations. And so if you are wanting to have more information like this in a bigger scale, definitely fill that form out and we will follow up with you. But thank y'all so much for being here, sharing space with us, being such a dope audience. We appreciate y'all. Ephraim, Alyssa, Shivani, do y'all want to share any final thoughts before we let folks go?
I just want to say I can't believe we did this in the short time. And again, this was a crash course. I really want to thank you all for staying with us, and I really, for those that reached out or people that are showing love on the chat, really thank you all for like embracing this. This is our first time doing it in a condensed version. If you are interested in this, again, I know there's some past graduates here. There's some past graduates here from the Institute of Impacted Leaders. I myself, Adriana, Alyssa, Shabani's currently taking the Institute of Impacted Leaders. Have done it. We all have done it. It's a great program. And I'm not just saying that because I work for IJ. I'm just saying it because it's a great program. It's something that I never knew I needed and something that I've grown to love. But if you want to make change, I mean, I think it's a great program for you all to join. And that was my pitch for Institute. Just kidding.
Nice. And we will share the copies of these slides in the recap email to make sure folks get
Yes.
copies so you have all the information. But it was a pleasure hanging out with y'all tonight. Thank you so much. Give it up for my team. They're fabulous. They're amazing. Y'all are amazing.
Give it up for yourselves too.
Yes, give it up for yourselves for hanging with us to the bitter end. Thank y'all so much. And without further ado, that concludes this month's meeting, and we will see y'all next month.